The very first thing when I tell people I'm writing a book, their first fucking question isn't who's your publisher. It's like, oh, you're self-publishing? Like, this is fucking today.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my dude.
Ideas are not unique little special butterflies. However, we live in community and we share these ideas with each other. And that's why you can quote someone is if you like put quotes around it and give attribution. It's not plagiarizing. I'm Margaret Kelsey.
And I'm Devin Bramhall.
And this is Don't Say Content,
a show created in partnership with Share Your Genius.
I need a massage. I need a lobotomy.
I need like a new entire life.
I need to like literally do the butterfly thing where I dissolve myself into goo and then reform into a new creature.
That is correct. Correct.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Goo phase for sure.
There are certain times in your life where you don't have choice. Whatever circumstances are in front of you, you have to just keep going. And so my new approach is to build some of that serenity into my day-to-day life by remembering that I don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And which is a me thing. That's just in the morning, don't just go straight to work. Don't just get on your computer. Like I have a list of things that I do, and it's like been helping a lot. Just like, again, there's a lot of circumstantial things coming together that don't complement each other. And so it's like, okay, Devin, like you got to keep going. It's in your best interest to do this. And so I made an executive decision. I'm going to Palm Springs for 2 weeks at the end of March to finish my book.
I love that for you. A writing retreat.
Yep. It's quiet. It's like, I've
warm.
been to Palm Springs twice, and it wasn't a place I ever cared about going to. And when I was thinking about where I might go, I was like, it's so quiet there.
I've never been.
Normally I like the beach more.
Yeah.
But there's something about being out there that I remembered where it's like, there's like a base, there's like a solid base of quiet. And they have really cute dog restaurant and cafes. I could literally order a meal for Henry. And they have the best cocktails, and they do have some really banging restaurants there.
Which will be your little treat at the end of a long day of writing or editing or book process stuff.
I want you to know that I sat down Sunday for 12 hours.
Wow.
I took one break in between. But yeah, it's like we're down to the hardest part of it and also the part that needs the most executive functioning in my brain.
Yeah.
Like I've gotten it all out there and I know what the ideas are. It's now's the part where like, how do you string it together in a way that makes sense?
Yeah. I always think that in any creative project, the last 10% actually takes like 80% of your time, right? It's like you get to the finish line and you're like, oh, I'm almost done. And it's like that last stretch is like, just keeps inching, it keeps expanding those last little bit. It's like literally the end of a football game, not to do a sports analogy because I'm terrible at sports analogies, but you know, like the last minute of a football game actually lasts 15 minutes. And you're like, what kind of time sorcery is this?
Time sorcery. I love that. Wait, is there a way, I'm curious, just because you engage in more visual art or play, right? Yeah. You do a lot of the written art as part of your job. I wonder, are there any parallels there to the process of creating something, whether it's a painting or a collage? I don't know what to call the thing that you do, that other thing with the photos.
Cyanotypes. Yeah, the color cyan.
Yeah.
Cyanotypes.
Cyanotypes.
Yeah.
Okay. Today I learned. So yeah, I'm just curious. Is there anything that like is similar, or I guess, do you have any advice for me?
I think with like visual medium and art, I mean, all of those are different, right? The cyanotypes, it's actually a lot of the prep work of the photography, the layouts, the whatever. The actual exposure, once I have everything set and done, depending on the strength of the sun, is a couple minutes maximum. And then it's done, right? And so then you rinse it and let it dry. But so that to me doesn't feel like as much tinkering at the end. Definitely in the when I was putting together the collection, the editing process of this one's in, this one's out took me a long time to actually build it into a narrative in the collection. So that piece takes a while, but definitely in terms of painting, like oil painting, there's no answer to when it's actually done. So you just have to know when to stop before you mess it all up. And I've done that plenty of times where I've continued to work on an oil painting and actually get it so much farther away from the good bit that it was at some point. So it's more about knowing when to stop there, because I think in any creative practice, especially like with a whole darn book, it's like you could tinker with it forever.
Yeah. My mom said almost the same thing to me about, because she just wrote and published a book. And I was asking her advice the other day because I was like, listen, I've set up all the right circumstances. I'm committed, right? Like, I'm being good about following my own rules and processes so that I'm doing the work.
Yeah.
And I said, it's just coming so slowly right now. So I was asking her advice. And she said to me, Devin, there's just a point. I went in for this last sprint. I did these things. And then all of a sudden I looked up and she said, I knew it was done.
Mm.
I knew it was done.
Yeah.
She also told me that when I was describing a challenge I was having, she said, listen, Devin, just because you think something doesn't mean it's important. And I wrote that down. I was like, that is a great editing philosophy.
Yeah.
Is this important to you, the writer, or will this be important to the reader?
Yeah.
For some specific reason, either it's compelling or it helps them understand it better.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's an interesting distinction too. Like you were writing a business book to teach and to change behaviors and change, like you're doing it in more of a lesson format. I think there's also purely the creative medium of, if it's important to me, it is important. You know what I mean? Like in a, let's say a memoir or something like that, that it would be like, no, I'm including that even if the reader doesn't care, because I need to like tell that piece of me, you know?
Yeah. Actually, that brings up a really good point/experience, because in writing the book, I feel like I'm being forced even harder than I've ever been before to practice what I preach. Because specifically around that part about making sure what I'm saying is important to the reader and I'm saying it in a way that they understand. Because one, I have to constantly check myself and say, Devin, have they been in this situation before? Like, will this situation that you're describing be familiar to them?
Yeah.
Or do you need to break it up a little more? Because there's a lot of my experience. It's extremely unique. Like something like, oh, I went to college when I was 16 in Hawaii. Other people are like, what?
Yeah.
And so, including with the instruction, I never really followed a playbook, parts of them. And so I actually sometimes have to remember what the playbook is to make sure that I can draw the right distinctions or similarities at any given moment. And honestly, ooh, my text messages. Why are those on?
I don't think I've heard my phone ring in years.
Yeah.
And yet I still check it every single time in a movie theater. I'll check to make sure my phone is on silent when they like do the little, make sure your phone is silent, even though I know for a fact it's silent.
Now that you mention it though, I do the same thing.
Yeah. I would never want to inconvenience someone. Oh, awful.
Oh, how terrible. Selfish.
That's something I'm working on.
Actually, I did say to my therapist yesterday, I did something I knew was wrong. I feel bad about doing something wrong, but I'm not sorry. And that is a new thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was Dr. Becky, who's like a parenting therapist, Instagram celebrity. She has some good stuff. And she was talking about this idea of like people saying like, oh, I feel guilty because like I'm not going to go home this year to see my like parents for Christmas or something like that. And she was talking about that's not actually guilt, because if you're operating from your set of like boundaries, it's an intolerance for other people's disappointment, but it's not actually guilt. Guilt is what you feel like when you operate outside of your set of values that like you know that you believe in, and then you're like, oh yeah, I messed up because I wasn't like in my value system. The other feeling is not actually guilt. The other feeling is an inability to handle other people's disappointment.
I also think that guilt that you're describing, because I definitely did something wrong.
Yeah.
But
Operating outside of your set of,
yeah,
of
like
values.
this was not that. But that other guilt, I've always thought that was a complete waste of time.
Mm.
Because if you're going to make a decision on your own behalf and then decide to quote, like feel guilty about it, then you're ruining the whole reason of you making a decision on your own behalf in the first place.
No, I know, but most people have been absolutely socialized to be people pleasers and put other people's emotions before their own.
Another thing my mom always says to me is just because you get called to a fight doesn't mean you have to go.
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time in relation to other people's emotions for me. Actually, this might be a fun story to tell on the
Yeah.
podcast because now I can tell like the whole thing. So I had a situation like this last week, which was like normally I would have been upset about it, but I thought it was so funny. I was like telling people it was like internet gossip about me, but it relates this idea of I chose not to go to a fight because I
Mm.
didn't feel like it and I was too busy. But basically, somebody, I guess, plagiarized a LinkedIn post of mine. And I obviously never would have seen it because I don't know this person, but a good Samaritan messaged me, DM'd me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, this one's pretty similar to yours that you posted last week.
Yeah.
Beat for beat." This was so polite. This was a very polite message, very professional. Any insights?
Any insights?
Like, didn't want to call anybody out. Was just like, I see you. I check LinkedIn if I'm lucky once every couple of days.
Mm.
So I hadn't seen it. I didn't know what the person was talking about. And when I went to the profile of the guy who had plagiarized me, the post was gone. So I only saw the screenshot, obviously. But by the time I got there, I think this Good Samaritan must have also said something to the copier because by then he'd posted this like bizarre, very bizarre apology.
Mm.
I went to go look. The post was no longer, he had been taken down. And in replacement was another post from him that said, it started with, "I tried something new on LinkedIn and it worked, but I don't like how it feels." And he wrote, "Last week I read a post by Devin Bramhall on how marketers need to sell their strategies internally. You should follow her. She's great. I saw it got a ton of engagement. I agreed with her points. I thought the topic would resonate with my audience. So inspired by it, I went and wrote my own version of the post. But instead of starting from scratch on the same topic like I usually do, here's how I wrote it. I copied Devin's post. I threw it into a custom GPT trained on my own voice. I asked ChatGPT to write it like I would write it. I messed around with it a few times to add color and context. I made some hand edits of my own. I posted it."
And there was no attribution in the original post that it was your idea in the beginning.
No.
Yeah. Well, that's where you went wrong.
Yeah.
Devin,
Yeah.
how difficult is it to create content when you're also leading an entire dang company?
It's really hard. You're not wanting the ideas for the content itself.
Yeah.
Because when I was running the agency, the mission and vision and values that I had set were like the passion inside me and why we were existing. And so I was constantly having these ideas that I would share with the team to get them motivated. When I left Animals, I didn't have time to create content. So now that I'm a solopreneur too, who's like, okay, I'm writing a book, I'm doing more than consulting now. I'm building some things and need to be out there among my people because everything I'm building is for them.
Yeah.
And it's hard. And so having the ability to record something and have that be immediately translatable into multiple different types of content is literally how I get by. Quite literally, the strategy in my book. I'm like, the human-centered multimedia AI powered approach to content marketing. This is literally it because it's been my experience. It's like you need the media first to create that water of content flowing down river that AI can help you atomize, right? You're just using your own words.
And the good news is Share Your Genius has something called Content Catalyst that does exactly that. They take all the good stuff from your execs in a 90-minute session, and then they deliver to you video clips, social posts, full on articles, and it's all mapped to your strategy, which is the most important thing about content creation, is that it actually does something for you.
And you know what's brilliant about that? Ever since I've been a marketer, I've gone to a new company and they've been like, should we start a podcast? And I've always been like, no, whatever they want to do with media at first, unless it's part of my broader strategy, I'm like, no. Well, guess what? Now you can say yes to that, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a video series, whatever it is, because now you can make the case for doing more with that because they literally hand it to you.
It's like content facilitation instead of content creation. And I think the best part is you're not running around after your executives or your thought leaders about deadlines, about them actually creating it and getting it out the door, which is always the issue is do they actually have time to do the darn thing? So all you need is 90 minutes for them to sit on a call, and then Share Your Genius does the damn thing and actually gives you all the content, and you don't have to wait and have that bottleneck be your executives.
It works because it's working for me right now. I am the queen of like, no, I hate that. I'm the worst. Like, I am my own worst enemy. But when I see my words reflected back to me, I'm like, oh yeah, I do believe that.
Man, you make me look good.
And PS, they've been incubating this for a while, and we know because we're insiders. Both Katie and Rachel have presented iterations to us along the way and gotten our feedback. They built something that we believe in because we've seen it and now we get it.
If you're interested in having Share Your Genius do this Content Catalyst program for you, there's obviously a link in our show notes. You can reach out to them. Let them know your good friends Margaret and Devin sent you.
Instead of it being a big investment, instead of you thinking about, oh, I have to hire an agency or I have to hire a person, like this is efficient. This is efficient use of money because you're getting a lot for what you're ordering and you don't have to get it from lots of different places. And the cost savings is huge.
And sanity savings. Can't put a price on that.
No way. No way. And so he said, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I read thousands of posts per week. I've got a ton of hook and post templates from various coaches and training programs. I've written posts with tried and true formulas before. This didn't seem all that different, but I'd never written a quote quite this way before. I posted it. I got a ton of engagement. You're welcome, sir. But looking back at the post side by side now, I'm realizing that I didn't change enough. I didn't add enough of my own voice, and I didn't add enough new information to really make it that different from Devin's. I want to make sure she gets credit for the original idea. If I go and make my other post a repost with my own thoughts, I would. Best I can do is take my version of the post down. It's hard to know where the line is on social media between homage and plagiarizing sometimes. Everything is a remix, especially when AI makes rewriting things so fast and easy. I don't think my post went quite so far as to call it stolen, but I don't think I spent enough time on it to really call it my own. I feel gross about it, so I won't be writing like that anymore.
Well, and I think that the thing that's missed, and this is like the issue with this idea that everyone needs to be thought leaders and content creators and everything, is just say that you thought that Devin's post was smart. And you could like repost it, or you could like say a couple words of your own agreeing with it and then tag the original create. You know what I mean? Like, I think we've gotten so individualistic in this idea of thought leadership. I agree. Everything is a remix. Good ideas are had by lots of people at the same time. There's all of this theory of innovation stuff that like when the time comes for innovation, that sometimes the same people like across the entire world have a same idea at the same time, right? Like,
yeah,
ideas are not unique little special butterflies. However, we live in community and we share these ideas with each other. And that's why you can quote someone is if you like put quotes around it and give attribution, it's not plagiarizing, you know?
correct. And there's so much like underlying this.
Yeah.
One, I have screenshots of the post and I will share them without showing the person, but it is quite literally identical. Like it is formatted exactly the same way.
Yeah.
It is what he's saying is like he's trying to change the narrative. It's like somebody clearly called him out
Yeah.
because it's not like he had just done it.
Yeah.
And he's like, shit, I need to get ahead of this.
Yeah.
It's possible he is actually sorry, but also in this situation, I have more influence than he does. And so the logical thinking is like, oh no, if she finds out, she can blast me, right?
Yeah.
But it is beat for beat. It is
Yeah.
not like, oh, I liked her ideas. The actual formatting is identical. The way the ideas are the same. And he's right. There's two ideas on there that are just like everyone knows. In
Yeah.
fact, my friend Brendan Hufford was like, the first two, Dev, like, we all know. It was a really funny comment. I was like, dude, you're right. But they were important context for the third thing. The
Yeah.
third thing was the thing that everybody loved so much about my post.
Yeah.
And that was mine.
Yeah.
That was like, if you want to change your CEO's mind, make them do math.
Yeah.
And so, like, the way I phrase it in everything, like, again, there's other people who give similar advice, but the way I presented it, the whole thing, it was mine. And again,
Yeah.
the post was copied. And the other thing is, and this is like something that I feel like I have to scream in the void a lot, which is that a lot of people have said they're inspired by an idea or me or something, but very rarely do they go out and say, Devin's idea was really brilliant. I'm inspired by it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other men around me who I see do get a lot of credit. People love to shout them out on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And it happens to me very rarely. And I don't care in the sense that I don't like it used to bug me before I had my own community.
Yeah.
Before I really felt, oh, but it happens all the time where it's like they'll tell me, especially men will tell me they like an idea of mine behind the scenes and then not credit me. And like Ronnie Higgins, he's a friend. He posted recently on LinkedIn. It was like, Devin said this thing and I thought it made like it was really
Yeah.
smart and it aligns with my thinking. And then he expanded on his own thinking. And I was like,
That way to
yes,
do it. Yeah.
yes, queen, I love you.
Yeah.
Jimmy, there was like a big, like the whole problem. And then here's the worst part. So now I'm tagging a post that clearly is self-serving.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want to give fucking attention to this. Also, I quite literally was busy. I was like, I am on calls back to back. I'm on deadline for my book and my client.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to join this fight.
The drama. That's not even a
Yeah.
fight. It's just drama.
Yeah. Internet goss. Kind of fun.
Yeah.
So, but then other people, like the initial comments were people like, oh my gosh, you're such a good guy. And then there was a little like someone at legit said something like about the fact that he had plagiarized. He's like, but did I really plagiarize? I think that's a little harsh. And I was like, I saw all this like after, right? Like I came late to the party. So like I was seeing all these conversations like once they'd revealed themselves. And I was like, oh, like you're using me again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Even by tagging me in this, now tagging me in this one. Now it's like,
And
yeah.
guess what? He never apologized to me personally.
Mm.
There was no DM in my inbox until someone had commented and asked, have you apologized to Devin? And Aricia was like, I'm friends with her. And no, he hasn't. And so it just made it so icky.
Yeah. The whole thing
And then
is
people
icky.
started tagging me and like this lovely woman, she was like, how does Devin feel about this? And I'm like, I don't want to give any attention. I don't want to give this more of a stage because this guy isn't sorry. And he already used me once. And I don't want to let him use me again. Twice. Yeah. And so but I didn't know I honestly didn't know what to do because I also didn't want to be like that invisible. Like I didn't want to let it slide, but like I didn't want to give any support to what he was doing. So I asked a couple friends, I was like, so do I have to deal with this or can I just like let this be fine? Like,
Yeah.
And they're like, we ride at dawn. Hold my beer. It was really sweet. It was very sweet. But then he took it down.
He took that post down?
Once people started actually acknowledging the fucked uppery of it and like calling him out, he took it down. Then he sent me a DM and apologized. And I was like, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not dealing with this, right? Like, I don't care about you. But it was so bizarre. That's what it was. Like, I wasn't mad. I was a little happy because it was really funny and I got to tell the story to a few of my friends. But I was like, it's just so weird seeing that psychology play out in real life where you're like, oh, are you okay on like a scientific level?
I think the inability to take full ownership and apologize is the most unfortunate thing to see. Fall on your sword. Just be like, yep, I tried something new. I'm looking at it now. It's way too close. I plagiarized. Won't happen again. I'll do it differently next time.
If he had DM'd me and said that, if he was like, hey man, I did this fucked up thing. I'm really fucking sorry. Like, here's the screenshot. I took it down. You know, what can I do to make it right?
Yeah.
I would have been like, you already did.
Yeah.
And we're good. Like, that would honestly have been the amount to which I even wanted to deal with it.
I think we should teach in like elementary school what a proper apology is. And I don't know if we're doing that anymore, which is acknowledge what happened. You can try to mention how you imagine it made that other person feel. You tell them it's not going to happen again, and you explain the things you're going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again. And that's an apology. Like, an apology is not, I'm sorry, but let me explain to you how it happened and what my thinking was and blah, blah, blah. Or I'm sorry, or this thing happened, but I'm not even going to say I'm sorry. Like, describing the situation that happened without apologizing or saying how you're going to do it differently next time or like calling it what it is not an apology.
No. And it just reeked so hard because of the fakery that we actually see online of he was trying to appear sorry. And the thing is, when I saw it, I was like, oh, this actually seems genuine, but it's clear that he's so thrown off by it that he can't picture himself as like doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Sure, he's not a bad guy, but like,
this is that stuck thinking of, if I acknowledge that I've done something wrong, I holistically am bad and wrong and whatever. And that's like, there's plenty of people that have a hard time doing that rather than being like, oh, of course, I'm a human being. I can accept the fact that one wrong thing that I've done does not completely negate my worth and my value and my goodness, you know?
And the freedom of owning up to it.
Yeah.
Like what no one tells you once you get used to this is like when you can go to someone and be like, I fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, and really like be brave enough to own it yourself. It is the most freeing thing in the world.
Yeah.
Because then you stop hiding from yourself. You stop hating yourself secretly. You're like, because what happens is if it's someone that you care about, you're able to work through it and keep them in your life. Lucky you, right? And then 2, you get to experience what forgiveness feels like, which huge bonus.
Yeah.
But also you feel more free.
Yeah.
Or at least I do. I'm like, I don't know. And I think like, look, there's this thing that I feel like is the screaming into the void part of it that just keeps coming up for me over and over in my career, which is this is really fucking gendered.
Yeah.
Like what this fucking motherfucker and his like dumb, whatever white boyness is that I had to work so much fucking harder than he did to get everything. And you want to know what else happened last week? I got advice from someone that was basically like at a place where I'm like, I have answered the most strategic questions in the world. Like I was brilliant. And after presenting this brilliant idea and having a succinct answer to every question, the advice I got was, well, you should just set the calls for them. Go do their work. Do this, do that. And then on the call, make them the hero, even though the things that we would have been presenting were my ideas. Like that still fucking happens to me today.
Yeah.
You want to know the other thing? The very first thing when I tell people I'm writing a book, their first fucking question isn't who's your publisher. It's like, oh, you're self-publishing? Like, this is fucking today.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my dude, like, even just to get here and even just to stay here and get credit for the stuff that I do, I'm doing right now that's like genius. I have to still try so hard. And I have to have a conversation where I'm like, no, I don't do that work
Yeah.
anymore. And also, what a horrible piece of business advice, because I'm really fucking expensive by the hour because you're renting my brain, not my like ability to schedule meetings, which PS I'm terrible at. As you basically just recommended the company overspend on admin.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, that's the thing, is that people don't realize is like the reason it's so frustrating. We're not like, and why it always feels, at least from a woman's perspective, you're screaming into the void, because it's like everyone gets sick of hearing it.
Yeah.
They get sick of it. They're like, stop blaming white men, stop. And I'm like, well, then things need to change then,
Yeah.
because I am still pushing a rock up a hill.
Yeah.
Today, after everything I've done. And, you know, even the part about I get credit for running animals from other people, but guess what? I got whitewashed from that company afterwards. And the two guys I worked with both got companies.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? This isn't complaining. It is real and it hurts people's lives.
Yeah.
Like the fact that I have to, you know, work 24/7 just to get by with a social security check so I can have time to write this book. And like, I am doing everything myself. And I am just like so many other women. That doesn't make me special. That actually makes me like so many other fucking women out there. That's what this dumb guy doesn't get when he copies a LinkedIn post. I'm like, how about you fucking make somebody's day instead?
Yeah.
Because this is easier for you, no matter how hard you think it is, because you don't know what hard is.
Yeah. And thankfully, I'm not experiencing it in my work stuff right now, but I have that absolutely in spades in my personal life where I'm like, can you just acknowledge that I still am, but definitely was doing everything plus.
And you think it's table stakes. Sorry,
Right.
the other person
Yeah.
thinks
And
table
it's not
stakes.
even table stakes, it's invisible. It's required, it's mandated.
That's like motherhood stuff right there too,
Oh,
right? Like
motherhood radicalized the crap out of me.
yeah.
I do really think that in terms of like the relationships and marriage and stuff, I think feminism and partnership is palatable up until parenthood. And then the wheels fall
Interesting.
off because I think we have taught women to live in the man's world. And we have not taught men what it looks like then to live in a traditionally feminine world. And so I think we raised a whole generation of women that are like, yeah, I'm going to have a career and I'm going to have a family and I'm going to be able to do it all. And we did not teach men that they would need to have a different role than they're just going to go have a career and come home and have everything taken care of for them. Like we just missed the whole fact that in order for this partnership to work, we're going to need the other half to do something differently too.
Yeah. And that's, you know, it's funny that you just made me realize like the two most demoralizing pieces of advice I ever got were from women. And it's like, I think there's this first generation
Yeah.
of women who had to make it doing it the man's way.
Yep.
And that's still ingrained in them. And then it's this next generation, like my client, she's the opposite, right? Like she is the reason why I feel like it's worth working anymore.
Yeah.
I was at the point where I was like, I hate everyone. But she's like that next generation who's no, it's not like everyone gets held accountable the same.
Yep.
Everyone gets held accountable the same. And so it is, but it's interesting that you say that because I have twice spoken to women in power who I was like really inspired by and been like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this is what you think
this is what you have to do?
Yeah. And there are also a lot of men around me, specifically white men. I think that I live in a bubble of men who are entrepreneurs, dads,
Mhm.
husbands, and they're all of those things. And the way they, like Jay Kunzo, his wife has a big ass career.
Yeah.
It's medical in some way. And I don't speak medical, so I forgot. I'm so sorry, Jay. But it's like he operates, and he used to do a lot of speaking. He's talked about this before. And he was like, okay, I'm a dad now. Like, I can't speak as much because this is a two-way street.
Yeah.
Right? Like Devin Reed and his wife Shani, like they both created a brand together. They both have space
Yeah.
in this giant brand that they built together. They feel like equals in it. I think that's so many men that I know. So there's this weird thing where not all the forces are going in the right direction. It's more like a zigzag.
Well, yeah.
And
Forces are backsliding hard right now.
yeah. But anyway, the motherhood thing, really, I don't understand what that experience is, but it has been something that's reverberating around me more because all my friends started having babies in the last 3
Oh,
years.
I know. It's one of those things with friends where I'm like, I love babies. I get so excited anytime somebody has a baby. And it's hard to really explain what's likely to happen. And not all relationships, but it takes tough conversations because I think it takes a rare man who had that lesson while he was growing up. Like his vision of his career and family life will look different probably than previous ones, you know? Anyways, I don't know what this episode is about.
I love it. I think it's a great episode. We nailed it. Okay, y'all, that's a wrap. Thank you, as always, for listening.
We'll be back next week. And just remember, you're doing great. You're doing great.
30% of you are doing great. The rest, you got to get your shit together. Come on.
You know which side you're on this week.
You know.
You know. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye. I thought you were going to say I took one Adderall.
Yeah. Well, I take Adderall, but it's so that I can survive. I always tell people this. I'm like, Adderall doesn't like make me hyper. It calms me down.
Yeah.
I used to take it if I couldn't sleep through the night. I would take my daily dose of Adderall at like 4 a.m. and I would pass out.